In this video, I'm going to give you clarity of understanding what forgiveness actually is. And it's so important to understand this because it can send you down a rabbit hole of feeling like you're incapable and you just can't do what needs to be done. Now in the self-development field, we go in many different directions. We learn new skills and we also have to unlearn old things that we've learned. Things that we've learned that is a detriment to us. It doesn't matter what direction you go towards when you're talking about self-development. You will always end up at the path of raising self-awareness, becoming more aware about yourself. This is why you learn new things and unlearn old things. And we are emotional beings that think. We are not thinking beings that feel emotions. Emotions are first. Our emotions create our reality. What we experience in any moment, how we feel emotionally in that experience is what dictates if we're enjoying it or not, if we prefer it or not, if we even like this thing or not. Every decision a human being makes is based on the way that it makes them feel. So even as extreme as I want my family to be safe, the reason I want my family to be safe is because when they're not safe, I feel fear, I feel anxiety. Yes, of course, they might get hurt, but it's still the way that it makes me feel. When they're safe and I know that they're safe, I feel calmer, I feel peace. So everything in your reality is based on how it makes you feel. What you like might be completely different to what someone else likes. Your hobbies are going to be different to other people's hobbies. Let's say your hobby is playing football, and let's say someone else's hobby is playing chess. If you play chess, you won't like it as much as you play football. And if your friend plays football, they won't like it as much as they play chess. You will both feel differently based on the activity that you're doing. And as humans, we will go towards the thing that makes us feel good. So all the decisions we make are based on how it makes us feel. When we're talking about how to raise self-awareness on this journey of self-development, there needs to be an understanding of how we work as emotional beings. Yes, I can give you instructions to do this, 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 and this, and it will get you to certain places. But if someone gives you instructions and you just follow the instructions, you're not going to get as much benefit as understanding of why you're doing the instructions, why I'm even doing what I'm being advised to do. What's the reason behind it? I'm going to tell you the reason behind the concept of forgiveness and what it truly, truly is. Now, remember we said on this journey, you learn new things and you unlearn old things, things that are a detriment to you. I'm going to start off by telling you that most of the people that have been brought up in society have been taught forgiveness is something other than what it actually is. In our childhood, we would grow up and we would argue with other children. These other children may be our siblings, they may be cousins, they may be children at school. Whatever it was, there would be some sort of argument, some sort of falling out, some sort of disagreement. And understandably, because we're emotional beings, it would make us feel things like anger. In a moment, I might be angry with another child, with my sibling, with my cousin. And we still live in a time that I always call the emotional dark ages. This is because we don't live in a time where most humans understand how to fully be there for each other in an emotionally healthy way. Now, the unfortunate circumstances of this fact is that we are brought up in a way that is not emotionally healthy for us. So in a moment where two children may be arguing and had a fallout, the caregiver in the moment might come and break that argument up. And just the same way as the caregiver has experienced being a child, these scenarios, the children are told in the moment by the caregiver to stop messing around, stop being angry at each other, and make up. Even if it's not in the moment, it might be afterwards. You may be arguing with your sibling and then later on your caregiver will say, yeah, but it's your brother or it's your sister. And we're constantly being told that it doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter that you're angry about the situation or whatever happened. It doesn't matter that someone did something to you that you feel is wrong, which is why we feel anger in the first place. None of that matters. What you need to do is you need to forgive because it's your brother, because it's your sister, because it's your cousin, because that's the right thing to do. And sometimes we're punished into forcefully forgiving someone else. So there might be circumstances that you don't want to forgive and you're refusing so much so that you're the one that gets scolded. You're the one that gets rejected for being angry. You're the one that gets told off for expressing a boundary to the degree where you don't feel like you want to let that person off with what happened. This is what I mean by why we're not brought up in an emotionally healthy way. In those moments, we have to learn to abandon the parts of ourselves that are angry, that are frustrated, that are not okay with what's happened. And we have to conform to a standard set by our caregivers to forgive. So we're learning that forgiveness is by abandoning the parts of ourselves that are there to protect us, and by allowing the other person back into our reality, even though we have many parts of ourselves that are not okay with what happened. So now I'm learning to reject what I want and need, reject my own boundaries, and forgive. And usually as children, when we are forced to forgive, we eventually go back to how things were. We eventually go back to playing with each other. We eventually go back to sitting down at the table and all eating with each other and ignoring all the issues about the situation. We're learning that forgiveness is a huge self-betrayal and doesn't feel good at all, because I'm rejecting all these parts of myself. We're brought up in a world where society teaches us that this is what forgiveness is. That is not what forgiveness is. The idea that forgiveness is to allow someone to continue doing what they're doing or let them get away with it is so far away from what forgiveness actually is that it's made me create this video. But on this journey of self-development, you'll be like, well, hang on. Everyone tells me that the goal is to forgive. Even the great gurus and all the spiritual teachers and everyone that's in the self-development or healing community is saying that forgiveness is the way. Now, they're not wrong, but I really wish it wouldn't be presented that way. Forgiveness is at the end of the path, and essentially what we're kind of reaching for, but it's not really what we're reaching for. Forgiveness is not the goal. Forgiveness is the outcome of the goal, and not even the version of forgiveness that you've learned as a child. Not that forgiveness. The true forgiveness is the outcome of what the goal is. So let me explain to you what the goal is and what true forgiveness actually is. But for you to get a very clear understanding of this, you need to understand what happens in the moments where we would experience emotional distress without any resolution for that distress, which is what trauma is. And trauma isn't when only big things happen, like a car crash or a death in the family or sexual abuse. Trauma happens so much more than you would ever imagine. It's a very normal way that a human being reacts to a situation, to an experience that is emotionally distressful for them. It's how we keep ourselves safe in those moments. This is why I keep saying it's very important to understand how you work as an emotional being, because when you realize that, oh, trauma is actually just how I've been keeping myself safe. And healing, let's say, which is a tool in your path of self-development, is actually doing what I need to do in order to reintegrate that experience. So in the moment where I may experience emotional distress without resolution, trauma, what happens is I learn to reject parts of myself. The parts of myself that I reject are the parts that are having the experience. Now, that experience might be an accident. We are creatures of needs. This is how we work as emotional beings. Now, in the moments where we may have an emotionally distressful experience, we still have needs in those moments. So I need something to happen in order for me to stay safe or to feel safe. But those needs might not be met. If I'm having an accident, let's say a car crash, whilst I'm in that car crash, I don't feel safe. So whatever I need to feel safe is not being met. So the way that I keep myself safe is by rejecting the part of myself that is having the full experience of that accident. I reject this part of myself by putting it somewhere I don't have conscious awareness of, which is my subconscious. By putting this part of myself in my subconscious, I'm not living fully in the reality of that experience in that moment. This is how I protect myself when I'm in a moment where I'm experiencing emotional distress without any resolution for the needs that I need to be met being met. This also happens when we get scolded as children, let's say. In the moments where I would get scolded for being angry, I'm expressing who I am in that moment. In that moment, I am the angry part of myself. And let's say my caregiver doesn't accept this part of myself, the part of myself that is extremely angry. So I'm scolded, I'm pushed away, I'm rejected, I'm abandoned emotionally. Because I rely on my caregiver for my survival, and in that moment, again, I have needs that are not being met, I have to learn how to get those needs met, because I'm emotionally abandoned by being rejected in that moment. So I do the same thing that humans do, which is how I stay safe in these unsafe moments, in the moments where I'm having emotional distress without any resolution, traumatic moments. I reject the angry part of myself in order to maintain a connection with my caregiver, which is the need that I need met in the moment where that experience is happening. So now we have these parts of ourselves in our subconscious, and these experiences where it's been emotionally distressful without any resolution, which has caused me to reject a part of myself into the place that I have no conscious awareness of, which is my subconscious, has happened hundreds, if not thousands of times in your life. And we are getting to understanding forgiveness, but this is the groundwork of truly understanding why we're going towards a place where we end up forgiving. Now, we've had many of these experiences, and throughout our lives, we will be triggered. A trigger can be you feeling the emotion of a part of yourself that you have had to reject in the past because you were having an experience that was emotionally distressful for you without any resolution for that distress, without those needs being met. And there are many ways that we work. Like, for example, some of these parts of ourselves will hold the emotion of anger, but anger itself is a cover emotion. It has fear under it 100% of the time. We are angry about something that we feel powerless to. Being powerless is despair. So despair might also be under anger. It's not like everything is brushed with the same brush. The individual triggers and experiences also require that unique exploration as well. But let's use anger. Let's say you have ended a relationship with someone. And let's say you've ended this relationship with someone that you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with. And this relationship has ended. And when you express how you feel towards this person and other people, more often than not, you hear, you just got to forgive them and move on. You got to forgive them. Trust me, I understand how invalidating this feels when you're told that you've just got to forgive them and move on, because the parts of yourself that are extremely hurt by what happened are not being validated. Your pain is not being seen, which means you are not being seen. Along with that, by being told you just got to forgive them and move on, and we've learned what forgiveness is, which is not what forgiveness is, but the version of it that we've learned is that I've got to be okay with what they did to me. I've got to be okay with the way that I was treated. That's what we're hearing when we hear you've got to forgive them and move on. But again, that's not what forgiveness is. And my most famous quote is, how you feel is correct every single time. Doesn't mean you should enjoy feeling bad. It doesn't mean you have to stay in feeling bad. But your emotions are a feedback. It's a communication to you. So how you feel every single time is a communication. It's data. It's feedback. It's trying to tell you something. So when I'm saying this next thing, just understand that I'm not suggesting you shouldn't feel the way you do. But at the core of how we feel in every moment when it comes to triggered wounds like this is that the feeling comes from the unconscious meaning we are giving to ourselves about ourselves. If I think about my ex not replying to me and ghosting me or moving on with someone else, all of that feeling that I feel, the anxiety, the anger, the shame, the jealousy, the fear, everything that comes up, at the core of it, it's because of the unconscious meanings that I'm giving about myself to myself. The parts of myself that are giving that meaning, which is causing me to feel like that, are the parts of myself that I've had to put in my subconscious in the moments where I had experiences where it was emotionally distressful for me without any resolution of having my needs met in that moment. Just because they are not in my awareness doesn't mean that they've disappeared and gone. It doesn't mean that I won't feel them. It doesn't mean that I don't feel them on a regular basis. I'm just unaware of them. But in these moments, when I am triggered, I start feeling them much more. So the goal of this path is to use the triggers that I feel as kind of like a fishing hook of a connection to this part of myself. Learn how to connect to this part of myself. Understand what experience it has come from, learn how to provide that safety that this part of myself needs, and to also meet any other needs that it might have. Now, earlier I said we use anger as a cover emotion. I always call resentment like the cousin of anger. We use resentment as a way to meet an unmet need. So if these parts of myself have unmet needs and someone is triggering this part of myself, and remember, the way I've always stayed safe is by rejecting this part of myself. And that's the only way that I know how to stay safe, because it comes from an experience of being so unsafe that I had to figure out a way to stay safe. And I achieved that by rejecting it. So when someone, my ex or anyone, would then bring that part of myself back to my awareness, I will do the same thing that has always worked to keep me safe, which is rejecting it. Now, the way that I reject it is by using resentment. By resenting the other is actually my way of rejecting this part of myself. Again, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be angry at someone else. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just telling you how you work as an emotional being. So if I'm resenting that person, I'm rejecting this part of myself. So this one example, what do? What I need to do is I need to go towards the emotions that come up. When I'm triggered and I'm feeling that resentment, I'm feeling that anger, and I'm feeling that fear, that jealousy, all the frustration, everything that's there. When I start learning how to go towards these parts of myself and feeling all of these emotions, I start connecting to these parts of myself. And by connecting to these parts of myself, I can understand where they come from. I can learn how to meet their needs. Remember, rejecting is how we've stayed safe. And if I'm using resentment as a way to reject, resenting is how I stay safe. That is the unhealthy way that I have been meeting this unmet need. But once I go into these parts of myself and I then learn a healthier way of meeting this unmet need, what happens is I start letting go of the unhealthy way that I've been meeting that unmet need. So the more I start meeting this need internally, I let go of my resentment more and more, because it's being met in a different way. And it's not even an effort. I don't need to put effort into letting go of the resentment. It's just the outcome of me meeting this need in a healthier way. Now, if I keep going to all the parts of myself and meeting the needs that they have in a healthier way, then I keep letting go more and more of the unhealthy ways that I've been meeting the needs of all these parts of myself. So then I will let go of resentment more and more, let go of anger more and more, let go of the jealousy more and more, let go of the guilt more and more, let go of the despair more and more. This is why the goal is letting go. And by letting go, what am I letting go of? The unhealthy way that I've been meeting a need, which was resentment. So I'm letting go of my resentment. And if I let go of my resentment, I'm not resenting that person anymore. And if you want to look at that in another way, you could say you no longer resent that person, therefore you forgive them. This is what forgiveness is. This is what it truly is. But let's go even further. By letting go of the unhealthy way that you've been meeting an unmet need doesn't mean that you have to be okay with the way that you've been treated by that person. It doesn't mean you have to do anything you don't want to do. Forgiveness is for you. By arriving in a place of forgiveness means that you've let go of an unhealthy way that you've been meeting an unmet need, which is what your pain is. But that doesn't mean the other person gets away with it. It doesn't even mean that you have to be okay with what they did to you. You don't. Forgiveness is not what we've learned it is as children. Forgiveness is the outcome of the goal. You don't need to aim for forgiveness. It's not a choice. No one in the world can choose to forgive and then just forgive. Even if you've experienced, right, I'm going to forgive that person, and it feels like a choice, what you're actually doing in that moment is you're choosing to let go of resentment or another way that you've been meeting an unmet need, and the outcome of that has been forgiveness. And there are also people that believe that they've forgiven, but they've just rejected the parts of themselves that don't forgive for so long and so much that they're so unaware of it that they don't even know they're still angry and resent. How you feel every single time is correct. It's a communication. The best thing you can do in this lifetime is to learn how you work as an emotional being. Now, what I do is I put out so much content with the goal of teaching you guys how you work as emotional beings so you can do what you need to do whenever you need to do it to be able to get to your true happiness, your true peace, to be able to create the life that you want to create. And I've created online courses where I teach you so much of this stuff. If you want to check these courses out along with testimonials of people that have taken them, you can go to my online support page by clicking the link in the description. I'm going to leave you with saying it one more time. How you feel is correct every single time because it's a communication. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.